So you said to me you hadn't. This is a 4K up-res, you say to me, of a 2K.
That's yes. Whoops, that sounds very loud.
Yeah.
Yes,
Don't be frightened.
I believe so. It's the unfortunate thing is the first time I've ever seen it in supposed 4K.
And what did you think?
Because it wasn't quite the way I thought, and the problem is there were so many people involved, so many labs involved. So we graded the 2K as we hoped it should look. We didn't have as much time as I would have liked because they were desperate to show it at the Cannes Film Festival again because they have a slot for previous nominations, and that was what they wanted to show because that was the same year as they did the new Blu-ray DVD release. So we had 3 labs involved, and I could only be at one, which was the one in London, because no one was going to pay for me to go out to New York to make sure that everything we had graded got transferred over to that. Having said that, I think it looked pretty good. I was very concerned, never having seen a 4K restoration before, I was very concerned that it might have a digital look. Everybody said, oh, it's going to look very digital. And I don't think it did. I think it looked like a perfectly good, reasonable print of a film that you'd have seen.
And you supervised the 2K, anyway?
I certainly supervised it on 2K, yes. But what happened to it after that, I'm not sure.
And they didn't call you or ask you to be involved? And
Well, I asked them if they'd send me a DCP of the 4K, and they didn't want to do it.
And they weren't interested?
No.
Well, that's a shame. It seems to be very common with restoration.
Well, our whole, once you've shot the film, our whole involvement in things like trying to grade the dailies and everything else is becoming increasingly difficult. I had an experience with Sony once where they said to me, we don't normally invite the DP. The DP can only go there with the explicit agreement of the director. And I said, well, why is that? And they said, well, because there's too many fights.
Yes.
But I knew the director very well, so he was happy for me to be there. But, you know.
Well, he should have fought for you, really, shouldn't he? I mean,
yeah, they should do, yes.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know whether it would ever happen, but in the same way that under the DGA rules, the director has 10 weeks to do his own cut, I think that we should have a period where we can do our own grade. It doesn't obviously have to be 10 weeks or anything.
Yes.
But even if you only had a few days, first of all, I think it would save time in the long run because you can agonize too much over small detail.
Yes.
And B, it would be a reasonable chance of you actually preserving your look down through the release.
Yeah.
But whether I don't think we'd ever get that. Ever.
Yeah. No, I've had trouble with Sony as well in the past, but I always say the cameraman gets enough money shooting the film, why should we pay him to do the DI? So,
well, in the old days when you spent like 3 or 4 afternoons over a period of a month or so doing it, I didn't mind doing it for free. But if you're doing 6 weeks, 12 hours a day in a grading suite, then sorry, that should cost some money.
yes. It seems to frighten them, the DP being present, I have to say.
It does.
Now, you shot, I know you've been quite a fan of Fujifilm in the past, but this was shot on Kodak, if I'm right.
Yes, the sort of history, the little backstory about it. For some odd reason, when I first started working with Machinery, everything they shot was 1:6:6:1. And I was checking my gear on Room of the View up at Samuelson's, and Sydney said to Mr. Sydney, as he now is, Tony, why are you shooting this 1:6:6? I said, I don't know, that's what they've asked for. He said, well, no one's ever going to see it like that. It's going to be 1:8:5, certainly in England and America.
Yes.
So I had to make sure that we had 1:8:5 in the viewfinder, and that's what we framed for. And that seemed to be Jim and Ismail's favourite format. And over the course of the other 3 films I did, I said, Jim, why don't we do something?
That was Room of the View. That was one.
That was Room of the View.
Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Bridge and Slaves in New York were all 1:6:6, and all standpoint. And I said, let's do something in widescreen, Jim. Don't you think? The minute I saw that location of Howard's End, I said to Jim on the Scout, I said, Jim, you've got to shoot this in widescreen. Look at the location; it's just perfect for it. And he went, oh, okay. So I originally wanted to shoot it anamorphic, because I thought that would give the best result in those days. And Super 35 was not that prevalent then as it is now or later.
So, excuse me interrupting, did you do Super 35 as a print version rather than a DDI version?
As a print
Now,
version,
it came out as a print?
Yes, it came out as a print. But just to finish off what I was saying,
yeah, sure.
I wanted to shoot it anamorphic, and because of the extra cost involved, Ismail was kind of, oh, I don't want to spend the extra money sort of thing. So I said, well, all right, well, let's shoot it Super 35. And the The cost of shooting is no different. There's a cost later on down the line, but that was in a different budget sort of thing. So they agreed to do that. And I also knew that you could do a 70mm blow-up directly from, with the anamorphic, of course, with the Super 35, you have to put a squeeze and do a blow-up. With the 70mm, you can just do a straight 2 times blow-up to 70mm. And the 70mm prints of that looked terrific, and the sound was as good, if not better than that. So that's the backstory of that. But, and we then did Remains of the Day the same way. And when we came to do the Golden Bowl, I actually got to shoot it anamorphic.
Right.
And from my point of view, that was the best. But Jim hated it because he couldn't see it on his television at home, because they had to pan and scan it in those days. So he didn't.
Yes.
So when I stopped working with them, and then went back to shooting 1/66 again.
How interesting. Did he adapt to the 240:1 extraction you were doing?
Yeah, I think he liked.
In terms of staging and...
Well, yes. I mean, the thing about it is, in those days, we didn't have video assist at all. Jim would be standing right here, and I'd say, Jim, do you like it like that, or do you like it like this? And he'd look through it and he'd go, yeah, that's fine. I don't think he fully realised what you could do with the widescreen at the time. We didn't do storyboards. You'd come in the morning, they'd rehearse the scene, and off they would go and get dressed, and we'd light it and we'd shoot it. And for me, the biggest technical problem there were the hats. Small rooms, very big hats,
yes,
with the basic problems of shooting them. And you had to liaise a lot with the costume design department, because is the hat that way, is it this way, is it that big, is it... that took a lot of discussion.
So were you allowed to have a say in which way the hat went?
No, I had to shoot it depending on that. The hat was designed to go in a particular way.
Yes.
So you had to know that and then sort of plan the shooting of it because of that.
Yeah. So did the way Ivory works, I don't know if he does this on every film, but did he like rehearse with the actors without you there and then...
No, I was always there. No, Jim would always involve the DP in everything. I mean, even the grading, and even things like if they had a showing of a film at the Venice Film Festival, you were always invited, or anything, or Cannes, or anything like that, which was great, actually, because it sort of kind of made you feel part of it all. Whereas with some other productions, you were never even invited to the crew showing on some occasions.
Right, yes.
So,
was he an organised director? I mean, did he know how he wanted to shoot it or cut it, or did it evolve on the set?
It evolved on the set, really. I mean, Jim was very quiet, which is why Ismail shouted a lot. And between the pair of them, it sort of all got done, really.
So you were very vital to the proceedings, and
dare I say
as
so?
any cameraman
dare I
is.
say so? Yes, I hope so. I think. Well, the thing about Jim is shameless. So if you come up with an idea that he'll happily let go with it. He won't. It doesn't all have to be his idea all the time.
Right.
Which was nice, because you felt you had a complete sort of collaboration with him, and you really felt that you made a contribution to the film.
Yeah, oh, that's great.
So that was
great. Yeah.
And sadly, some years later, not only did they go back to 1/66:1, but some bright spark on a subsequent film introduced him to the video assist, which was a disaster.
So how did he react to that?
Well, what he used to, because he is a very quiet man, and so he'd be parked in another room somewhere with a video assist, and somebody would say cut, and it would be very quiet for a bit, and all the actors would be going, what's going on? Particularly Hopkins, he hated it, because we did after I did Remains of the Day, there was a gap, and they went to do some things in Paris. And then we had Hopkins again on a film about Picasso, and Jim insisted on having his video assist, and it just took him out of things.
Yes.
It's absolutely, for his personality, it was absolutely the wrong piece of kit to have. Plus, it cost more money, so Ismail didn't like it either. And he had to have somebody else doing it. So.
Yeah. Did no one try to talk him out of it? Did you try to talk him out of it? Or?
No,
did he fall in love with it?
He fell in love with it, as they all do. He fell in love with it.
Yeah.
But it was so much better when he was right next to you. The actors liked it. I liked it. It made discussion, an ongoing discussion, possible all the time. You didn't have to go and winkle him out of his little room somewhere to find out what he thought.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a useful tool, video assist, but it can can derail some people.
But it is odd when you see directors with headphones on looking at a video assist, and you think, well, actually, if you took all that off, it's right there in front of you.
Yes.
I mean, what's the problem with your eyes and your ears?
Yes.
I mean, all you're doing really is checking up on what we do and what the sound guy does.
Yeah.
And in theory, we know what we're doing.
And did you operate for most of Ivory's films?
Yes,
Yeah.
all of them, in fact, because they were used to that way of working because they'd started in India. Their first films were in India. And that was what they were used to. And I was happy to go along with it since I love operating anywhere.
So did you feel that your job as an operator was reduced by the video assist? Or? But instead of you turning around and saying, I thought that was terrific, you have to turn around and wait for them to say something.
Yeah, absolutely. It just slowed everything down. And I know Tony in particular got very upset on Picasso because of that. But it didn't stop me working with them again, so that was fine.
Yes. Because I know that an operator I work with, Roger Pierce, always says, I'm waiting for the vultures on the video assist to make their minds up.
Well, it's all the other passers-by who have their comments,
Yeah.
particularly on some of the bigger films I've done in America. I mean, anybody seems to be able to say whatever they want. And you think, hello, who are you?
Yes.
That doesn't inhibit them in any way.
Yeah. And you'd be taking an idea from anybody, you're saying?
Well, if you see from the
when the
credits,
video assist came along.
When video assist came along, yeah. Well, lots of them do too. You're fighting that all the time.
Yes,
and
sure.
that's one of the problems. Once you've got video assist, you kind of have to give up operating in a way because all that dialogue's going on the monitor, and you're not privy to it.
Yeah.
And things are changing, and you think,
Yeah.
what's going on? So
Exactly right. Yes.
And then once you introduce a second camera into it, then you just have to walk away from operating and
Yes.
just. You know.
I have to say in the film, the use of weather was fantastic.
Yeah.
And did you have control over the scheduling for that?
I think in
Was there a
terms
lot
of
of
the
luck
time of
involved?
day, in terms of the time of day, like for example on that last scene, we had a Titan crane, and you had to time the weather for that. But the mist down in the sequence we shot in Devon was just.
Obviously it was there, yeah.
It just was there.
It wasn't a big smoke machine.
No, it wasn't a big smoke machine, no. I mean, for me, the greatest pleasure about it is it doesn't look like a low-budget film, which it was.
Yes.
Well, it wasn't peanuts, but it was not an expensive film to make.
It was probably it was one of his most expensive, wasn't it, if I remember
Yeah,
rightly?
probably somewhere in the
It
region
was
of
an $8
about
million budget.
8 or something like
Yeah,
that.
which in those times was reasonably substantial for it.
Yeah. But when you think of all the locations we had and
Yes.
the set dressing, which was astounding, I mean, the art department did an amazing job. It was the first time he'd worked with Luciana Arrighi, and she did several films of him subsequently. And they were all beautiful and lovely to look at and lovely to film because of that.
Yes. No, it's terrific. So it was all location. There was no studio work at all?
No,
sets
they
built?
barely in their lives have they ever done anything in the studio. The only thing they ever did, again, when we shot Picasso, Surviving Picasso it's called, we had to build a set of his studio at Pinewood. And but it had to be built like a real location, because Jim couldn't deal with the fact they didn't have ceiling pieces or all that kind of stuff. So it was essentially a complete model of Picasso's studio, but in the studio.
Yeah.
That's, I think, about the only time he's ever worked in the studio.
Uh-huh.
He likes, all the locations have to be the sort of places that action would really happen in, even when I would say, Jim, it's really a bit tiny, this room, I'm going to be stuck in the doorway. I love to try and get camera movements wherever I can, follow the actors or whatever. And sometimes some of the rooms were a little on the tiny side for that.
Yes. Now, the opening scene, which is all dusk, basically,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes, it's
Now,
magic.
did you shoot that all in one go? Probably not.
You
did?
Not the second shot, not where Helena comes
That's
out with. The two or three shots where the titles are on it. Yes, but that was one night. But we just arrived on that location for about a 3-week shoot, maybe 2.5 weeks. So the second night we did the scene, the next shot where she comes out with her boyfriend and then they kiss under the tree. That was the second night.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't, you were right on the edge of the light disappearing.
Of course, yeah.
And so you would not have got it.
So you did sort of split it up.
Yeah, we had to. Yeah, we had to.
Is there a particular camera and lenses that you like to use?
On
a film like this?
I used the Panaflex, and I think Primo lenses all the way through, which became my favourite for many years, to be honest.
And has that been throughout your career with James?
No, we started off as the film festival we did with Room with a View, which was, we had BLs, and I just found them noisy. And I got so fed up with shooting a scene and suddenly a very large duvet would be thrown over my head because of the noise that the sound department were complaining about.
Yes.
And when I was doing, in between Merchant Ivory films, I did a film in America, and I was going to use a BL, and these guys from Panavision turned up, as they do in America, and said, why don't you come out to Tarzana and look at our cameras? So I did, and there was a Panaflex, and I turned it on, and I thought, oh, this means I'm not going to have to be under the sound department's anorak for the next 12 weeks. And so that was the start of my using Panaflex cameras.
And whereabouts was that in the inventory of James's films? When did you...
That was, I think, yeah, no, the first one, that would have been after Room of the View, in fact.
Room of the View,
That was a BL.
Which also won all those awards, I think, except the BSC award, I think, for that one.
And I won a Evening Standard Technical Achievement Award.
That's right, you did.
I did. Which was nice in that. It was a glass. They're much fancier now, but it was a nice. The great thing about the Evening Standard one is they only invite the winners. So everybody turns up being relaxed and is in a very good mood, and it's a terrific evening.
Yes. And that's it, go over nothing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now you, the distribution of this was quite odd, wasn't it? Because originally Orion were involved, and they were near to bankruptcy, I think, at the time.
Were they?
And yes, well, maybe you don't know this, but
no,
they were.
No.
And two guys who ran it actually jumped ship, and they ended up at Sony. And this turned out to be the first Sony Classics film release.
Oh, then you know more than I. I know the previous film I'd worked on, which was a George Romero film. Orion had gone into bankruptcy then. In fact, I'd just come back from Pittsburgh, and so that made sense. But all I ever met, the only distribution lady I met was a Japanese lady who represented the Sumitomo Bank Corporation.
Yes.
And didn't see any other studio executives around. And in fact, on Merchant Ivory films, you hardly ever see any studio executives around.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Because also, Japan was the last call, wasn't it? Because up until then, they were having trouble finding financing.
Yeah, but they've always liked their films in Japan, so I think once they got involved...
I think Ismail's way of working, I think.
Yeah.
Cut it to the quick.
Yeah.
Now, you started in the film industry in Rhodesia, in fact.
Yes, I left school when I was 16, and I joined what was called the Central African Film Unit. And that was in about 1961. And because I was English, whenever a visiting English crew came, like David Attenborough or anybody like that, they'd say, oh, you better go and work with them because you're English. You can, And as I'd always wanted to come back to England, I'd lived there by then about 5 or 6 years, I used to say, oh, can I get a job when I come back to London? And they said to me, well, the BBC takes on holiday relief people over the period of the summer.
Right.
So why don't you try that? So after several years, in fact, I did do exactly that. And eventually, after a few detours, I did actually get a job at the BBC as a holiday relief, as an assistant. And that was great, but the contracts kept getting shorter and shorter. And eventually, it was like a couple of days, and September was coming, and I thought, And then luckily, one of their staff assistants left, and I got his regular job.
Right.
So I was on staff after that, which was like one of these moments. And I was there for 13 years.
Yeah. You also had to do national service in Rhodesia, didn't you? That's something
yes,
we'd lost in England. But,
yeah, 18, I mean, my birthday's Christmas Eve, and like 2 days later, I got my call up, sort of 2nd of January, in the Chorus Signals as it was.
Could you get involved in film with in your national service?
No, well, I tried.
Or photography? Or?
I wanted to because they had an Air Force, and I said, look, can I not join their photographic unit because they did obviously reconnaissance stuff. Yeah. Because a friend of mine who'd also had to do his national service had done exactly that. He'd been in the RAF, double RAF as it was. But of course, you know, being in the army, they said no, infantry.
Put you in a cookhouse.
Yeah, exactly. So that was because that would have been good. I would have loved that, but
yes,
didn't happen.
Now you got a BAFTA for Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which you did at the BBC. Did that promote? Did that promote you to get into feature films, or did you just take a chance on?
No, people started to ask me to do films, and various producers who had been at the BBC had left and was starting to produce films like Moonlighting, which was my first one. But also, do you know one of the things that finally, I'd had little niggles with the BBC over years, but one of the final things was a production. They had these things people called FOMs, Film Operations Managers, who arranged the allocations.
Like production managers, really, weren't you? Yeah.
And I walked into one office one day when I was feeling quite pleased with myself because I just won the BAFTA award. And this secretary said to me, "We're going to make sure you don't do Smiley's people." And I thought, yeah, that's about right, actually. That's the sort of way the BBC works.
Yes.
You know, if you've done a good job, then it's punishment park for 6 months and Man Alive or whatever else.
Yes.
Not that Man Alive was particularly punishment park, but the worst thing.
I did Man Alive.
Jack and Nori, perhaps.
Yes. I did both of those.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well, we all did them all. And I thought, yeah, that's about right. And I thought, well, first of all, it was 16 mil, and I'd always wanted to shoot 35. And eventually somebody rang me up and offered me a project, and I thought, right, I'm off.
Yes.
And God bless them, they made it very easy for me to leave, and I thought, well, thanks very much.
Yeah. I mean, was it a wrench to leave? I mean, everyone kept telling me this is a job for life. And they were so wrong about that.
Yeah, no, I think in those days they were very happy for people to leave because it gave turnover, because they had such huge crews. I think when I left, there was something like 63 complete camera crews.
Yeah.
So anybody who left was great because it meant everybody else could move up a notch.
Yeah.
So, no, the famous Reg Crawley said to me when I was leaving, he said, I've got a little bit of hospitality. I said, oh, cheers, Reg. He said, if you buy the wine, I'll buy the sandwiches. And I thought, okay, if that's what it means to the BBC, I'll happily leave.
Yes. And your first credited feature was Moonlighting.
Yes.
With Jerzy Skolimowski, and which is a well thought of film. I mean, to this day. And,
yes, it's nice. When Jeremy, who was on a high after having done Brideshead, and so he did very well, and one or two real Polish builders in there.
Yes.
And it was all shot in about 18 days. What had happened was initially the money disappeared. And whoever was originally, I think it was a Polish cameraman, was probably going to do it because Jerzy being Polish, Jerzy Skolimowski. And I knew the producer Mark Shivers, who I'm sure you probably
from
knew
BBC,
as well.
Yeah.
And he was producing for, might have been Goldcrest, I'm not sure. And then the money obviously reappeared again, and so they offered me to do it. And it was terrific. And it was shot at breakneck speed.
Yes.
All in Jerzy's, virtually all in Jerzy's house in Kensington, which basically he wanted to have rebuilt. So he'd written the script around these Polish builders rebuilding a rundown house in Kensington.
So you were doing out the producer's house while you were shooting, basically?
The director's house.
Yes, director's house.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And the one thing they didn't complete was the bathroom. Heavens, how you couldn't not get a house completely completed in 18 days and make a film.
Oh, it's tough work.
Heaven only knows. So they didn't get the bathroom done. And so a year later, Jerzy wrote another script about these Polish builders who build a new bathroom in this producer's house. Luckily, I wasn't involved in that one.
What a shame. So after that, later down the line, did you find it tough when you went freelance, first of all? I mean, did you find
yes, it was.
that feature people look down on television?
Well, there was that. I mean, in those days, when you came...
That's what I felt, yeah.
One of my first commercials... You nearly always had to have an operator. You had to have a 5-man crew, even on a commercial.
Yeah.
And I turned up on my first commercial, and the director was Len Fulford, famous old commercial director. And
he was a photographer, wasn't he? By trade.
Was he? Yeah. Anyway, it was a nice shot, but there was no operator turned up. Although there was a name on it called Jimmy Stillwell. And I said, oh, where's Jimmy? And they said, Len likes to do the operating himself, so Jimmy doesn't turn up. So he had to sit at home and get paid because that was the ACTT regulation.
Yes, of course, yeah.
About a week or so later, I got to do another commercial, and on the call sheet it says, and the thing that Len said to me, I said, Len, where's Jimmy? Why don't you use the operator? He said, I find operators such bullies, don't you? so about a week later, I turned up on another commercial, and on the call sheet it said operator Jimmy Stillwell. And I thought, oh my God, he's going to try and bully me on this shoot or something. And in fact, he was very nice. He was sweet and stick. So. But some of the older operators did make you feel as though you should curtsy to them in the morning when you came on as a young DP.
Yeah, I worked some good guys and some not so good guys.
No, some of them are good and some of them are not.
I did a commercial with Chick Waterson, who was probably one of Britain's finest operators. Doing for Bounce.
Well, I'm sure the very good ones were not a problem. It was the ones who were less good or less well known who'd be a bit more grander about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that kept the wolf from the door commercials, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and they were great to do. I mean, I was lucky I got to work with a few really good stylish directors, and it was terrific, actually. I loved it. One of whom introduced me to working a lot in France, because he spoke French perfectly. And I did my first, Barry Myers his name was, and he said, Tony, he said, I've got this commercial to do, beer commercial in France. He said, we're in Provence, it's just cherry trees and lavender and a bit of sunshine. Is that all right? I said, yeah, that'll be fine, Barry. And we went out there and we shot the beer. And in those days, when you saw the rushes, you saw it in the cinema.
Yes.
And so I lit the beer, and the agency came in and said, oh, Tony, la bière est sublime. And it sort of got me doing loads of French commercials, mainly about beer and stuff like that.
I think you actually studied French, didn't you? You studied to learn French.
I did study to learn French.
On the
yes,
back of that,
I did, because I had a lot of projects coming up, and I thought, it was nice. And I have to say, they were very, very nice to me on the whole. I only had one very bad experience, but they were really terrific and very friendly.
Can you still speak French now?
Enough.
French? Yeah. Very good.
Assez bien pour travailler.
You go over to Paris for a little bit of a...
No, I do up in, I don't go to Paris anymore, but I do keep it up. I do go to France whenever I can.
Yes. Well, good for you. Now then Private Function came along, which was a lovely little film, I think. And
it is a great little film.
Yes. Yeah. And that introduced you to James Ivory, in fact.
Yes.
I think.
Jim and I had sort of, my wife is a costume designer, and she knew Judy Moorcroft, who was Jim's costume designer on a number of films, including Heat and Dust and so forth. So through that connection, I sort of put out feelers and said to Judy, look, if they ever are needing a cameraman, how about Muggins here? And it also turned out I had shot a film for Granada called The Good Soldier. And Jim and Ismail had wanted to produce and direct that, but Granada had the rights to it and it became a TV show. Coincidentally, Jim wrote a very nice review of the film for Sight and Sound, so he'd become a little bit aware of my work. And then when he came over to London, he saw Private Function and they were looking for somebody else. Then he'd had two films in mind that he'd seen and liked. So he took me out to dinner and somewhat apologetically said, Tony, you know, the most exciting thing in the Merchant Ivory film is a tea party. Is that all right? Oh, sorry. Is that all right? And I said, yeah, Jim, that'd be great. And of course, the next thing, we were ankle deep in mud in a murder sequence in Florence, to such an extent, in the dailies, Ismail rushed up and said, what is this, a horror movie?
Yes, of course, because there's that sort of murder in the middle of it.
Yes.
But that was a good opener for you, wasn't it?
It was.
It was Oscar, BAFTA, ASC nominated, BSC, it won. Oh no, it didn't win the BSC, but it won the Evening Standard for Technical Achievement and the New York Film Critics Award for Cinematography.
Yes, which I never saw, because when I rang them up about a year later and said, where's my award? They said, oh, we don't know, some Indian bloke ran up and took it away.
What award?
No, you have to, also their timing was great, because at the time of Room with a View, the alternatives were like Rambo and films like that. Nobody was doing period films in that time, except for Merchant Ivory and on a smaller scale. So it really created a niche, which now, of course, the period films are 10 a penny, Downton Abbey and everything else.
No, it's a terrific looking film. You lost out to Out of Africa, by the way. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I didn't, actually.
Ah, according to my research.
No, it wasn't Wendy, because I tell you what happened. It was, I tell you exactly what it was The Mission. Because I'm sitting in the Oscars like that, and I was at the end seat there. Yeah. And Chris Menges was next to me and so forth. And the guy with the little walkie-talkie camera came up to me and he said, and they were announcing the nominees and stuff like that. And he looked at his camera and he said, Tony Pierce-Roberts? And I went, yes. And they said, and the winner is Chris Menges. And Chris got up. No, it was definitely The Mission. Yeah. And the second time I was nominated, it was...
River Runs Through It.
River Runs Through It, that's right.
Yeah. So James Ivory said about, well, part that you've told us the one about the most exciting thing to happen in the Merchant Ivory film is the tea party.
And you have to restrain him with tea parties, because if you let him have them, he'll have 3. And you have to say, Jim, you can only have 1 tea party.
No,
you can't have 3.
Party. Well, you did in the end. You did 7 films with Ivory and Merchant.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, did you guys part, or just the films ran out? Or?
No, I think I sort of felt, I started to become kind of a bit marginalised because everybody associates you with that. And early on, in fact, even after Room of the View, after Slaves of New York and Mr. and Mrs. Bridge, I was offered a George Romero horror film. And I thought, well, you can't get any more different from Merchant Ivory than a George Romero horror film, sort of slash and all that kind of stuff. So I went to do that. And that, of course, was Orion as well, which you've reminded me of. And sadly, it wasn't a bad film. I mean, the reasons for doing it were great. It was about a 12-week shoot with George. It was a script by Stephen King, which was another good reason for doing it. It was in Pittsburgh. It was non-union, but it was all right. The money was halfway decent. But at the end of it, Orion went bust.
Yes.
And eventually it got a very, very minimal release. Got a very good review in the New Yorker magazine and 1 or 2 others, but just disappeared. Yeah. Which was a shame, because actually it's not a bad fun.
Well, can I read, you probably know this, what Ivory said about you was, for me and Merchant Ivory, Tony was a momentous discovery. In all, he shot 7 of our features, as well as some of my commercials, at the apex of our box office success and critical endorsement. From A Room with a View through to Remains of the Day. With every film, his work became more ravishing, and it would be the greatest pleasure to team up with him once more.
Oh, he never told me that, but yes. Thank you.
That's what he said. Yeah.
Where did he say that?
He said, I don't know when he said it, but he obviously said it after this.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know where he said it, but he said it after the 7 films. So,
oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, because he says we worked together for 7 films, so let's put somewhere down the line.
I would have done White Countess, but I got to the point with them, and I thought, well, actually, it wasn't just the money, it was that Ismail wanted me to go to China on my own and with 2 weeks prep for it. And I said, Ismail, you can't prep a big film in China in 2 weeks. I need 4 weeks, and I need various people with me. And he wouldn't negotiate on it, so I said, look, I'm sorry, that's it, I'm going to do. Yes. I was offered another film, which I went to do, so that was it, really. Yeah. And shortly, I think the Chinese did for him, actually, and shortly after that, he died. I think even he found the Chinese too hard, difficult to deal with.
Now, was it Howard's End or Room with a View that opened up the American side of things?
I think it was Room with a View, actually. Yeah, no, I started to get quite a number of films in America because of that. And
you did a picture called The Client.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was anamorphic.
Yeah, that was anamorphic. Yeah. That was my first anamorphic, which I was so... because of that, that's why I wanted to shoot this anamorphic, because it's just so great. It's such a big negative.
May I? Something you said earlier to me was it you didn't do Morris because there was an offer of something more filmic that you wanted to do?
Yes, there was Ismail would. Most DP's contracts you can do in an afternoon, so there's no excuse for any producer to sort of fiddle around for months. And Ismail would do that in the hope that any other offers that you might have had would disappear, and then you would accept whatever it was he wanted to offer you. Yes. So he would never really sit down and negotiate in a sensible period. So I would have done Morris, but he was shilly-shallying over the money.
Was he hoping for you to be cheaper then?
Every week he was in Screen International saying, Room with a View, we made it for $3 million, and look, it is making $29 million, and this and that. So I thought, well, actually, I think I might like a little pay rise, please. Because I did it. When I told Vilmos Sigmund what I'd shot Room with a View for, we fell about laughing. It was peanuts. And so I not unreasonably wanted a rise. And I'd been offered a film in America, and my agent said, look, I would do this film in America because once you get a visa there, that's it. They can't really then renege on future visas because obviously your reasons for coming in are that you've got this Oscar nomination. So in that sense, although I regret not doing Morris because it's actually quite a good film, very good film actually, it did open up other doors for that.
Do you think James Ivory fought for you after that and said, we've got to have Tony back? Or?
I don't know. I really don't know. You don't know, Jim. He's not very demonstrative. Ismail is the demonstrative one. Yeah. I mean, Ismail would come out. I did this film in New York, and he turned up one day with a big brown bag, and he said, Tony, look, here is Marmite, here is jam, here is marmalade, here is tea. I'm looking after you. And I said, I said, well, listen, Mark, if you paid me my wages, I could look after myself.
And he went,
No, it's water off a duck's back. Everything like that was a water off a duck's back with this man.
Yeah.
Never bothered him. He was the most bulletproof personality I've ever come across.
yeah. Now, was there a way, the way you worked with James, did you ever reference anything in terms of period? Apart from the obvious stuff of like, here's what they're going to wear and all the rest of it, but did you look at paintings or, stuff?
Well,
or
one of the good things about this is we didn't stint on the pre-production time. Because again, Ismail thought pre-production was a bit of for wussies actually. But we had lots of time to see all the locations and think about it really. And I think we referenced a lot of the paintings of a famous Edwardian painter called John Singer Sargent, who, all those dresses and things, and that sort of lighting and stuff. So I think they were the two things we discussed most in the pre-production stage.
Yeah.
But we did have a good, I think, 3 to 4 weeks on that, which was great.
Now, is that common for the way you work? Do you like to have references, or do you like to imagine it in your own head?
I don't mind, really. It's whatever the director wants. I mean, on The Client, for example, again, we didn't have storyboards. We'd sort of set it all up, sometimes with stand-ins, as they like to do in America, which I often think is a bit odd, but that's what they like to do. Joel would have his viewfinder, his monitor, because almost every director I've worked since Merchant Army has a video assist.
Yeah.
But Joel's much more Joel Schumacher, that is a much more outgoing personality with Jim. And there's no way you wouldn't know that he was around because he's very loud. So no, I mean, it's whatever the director wants. If they want to storyboard, I mean, I would like to be involved in the storyboards, but I was reading an article in this month's British Cinematographer, and Roger Deakins seems to be always involved in that, even to the extent, as he says, of often going away on his own with the storyboard artist. I've never had that sort of luxury. I mean, I think the first storyboard I ever came across was on the George Romero film, and they practically shut the door in my face. He and his first assistant did it.
Is that because of visual effects?
No, I think it was because George didn't know me, whereas his first assistant he'd done a whole lot of films with. And so I was off doing various tests of various things like that.
Right.
Birds tests and so forth, because they had thousands of birds in it.
I imagine that Romero was completely different to James Ivory.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
So I was going to ask you about that, because that's like a complete right-hand turn, isn't it?
Well, that's why I wanted to do it. And I thought, well, that will, all these people who say, oh, because people would say to my agent, oh, we don't want it to look like a Merchant Ivory film. And you thought, well, I think they look quite good, really, but there you go.
Yeah.
You can see that they wanted to look slightly different. Half the time they looked as good as, or the same as, if not worse. So, but in order to counter that, I thought, well, if I do these other films, so I did White Fang for Disney, I did that film for George, thinking that would do it. But I still get tagged as the Merchant Ivory cameraman. Is
it a genre of film that you like, or is you just because it's more visual and it's more about lighting?
Whatever. No, it's just the people you like. It's the people, really. I mean, I like working with Jim. And I like working with Ismail for all his. I mean, he never got angry. He just shouted a lot, and you couldn't take it too seriously. And I learned very early on that if you wanted something, you ignored Ismail's rantings and you just went to Jim, because if you could convince Jim that you needed, I don't know, 4 brutes or whatever it was,
yes,
then Ismail would always capitulate. You might only have them for a day, but you would get whatever you needed. And so I just used to deal with Jim, really.
It seemed to me you had some cherry pickers and stuff going on.
Oh, yeah.
So we had and a couple of crane shots.
Yeah, we had a Titan crane, which no longer is in England anymore. Because I love the Titan because it's so quick to set up. But no, I don't mind the genre so much as I don't think I particularly like doing lots of green screen. I find that a bit boring, although I have done it. But it's the people you're with more than anything else. If you get on with them, then whatever the genre is, hopefully you can adapt to it.
No, it's a good way around. Did you have trouble breaking out of the Merchant Ivory? You mentioned something earlier. Did you have trouble breaking out of that and people accepting you in another?
Well, the Americans seem to be, for some reason, don't ask me why, seem to be.
Well, they like to pigeonhole you, don't they?
Well, over here they do more. In America they do less. I recently was offered a job in China from somebody who'd seen all my merchant ivory work. And it was a robot dinosaur picture in China. Now, you couldn't get more different from much. But they could seem to be able to see, well, if you can do this, they seem to be able to extrapolate what you do as against what the film is and turn that into their project. But here it's a much smaller industry, and I think people can be a bit snooty sometimes about that.
Yes. And you did Dinotopia, which was, that's another left-hand turn.
Yeah. Oh, actually, maybe that's why they wanted me for Robo-Dinosaur Wars. You might have seen Dinotopia.
Yes.
You might have done.
Yeah, because that was quite different.
Yeah.
A lot of visual effects. That must have been more storyboarded than the others.
That was also. I mean, once you start doing any effects, and you've got a frame, and you know that bit is green screen, and this bit is something else, and that's CGI, then you have to. There's no question about it. And actually, although I say we didn't have monitors on merchant ivory films, occasionally, like for example, in the scene in there where they're in the car, where James Wilby and Prunella are in the car driving along, then obviously Jim had to have a monitor because he couldn't really get to the viewfinder.
Yes.
And so there were very few occasions, but he never seemed to say, "Well, I'm not giving this back." And Ismail was very quick to kind of snatch it off him and send it back.
Yes, and take another way. He does cook good Indian food, I understand.
Yeah, he does. He does.
For the crew.
So somebody said something earlier on the scene which struck me. They said, "We love the titles because they're so short then compared to what titles are like on the films now, because the number of people in it were very, very few."
Yes, interesting. Another thing you said in an interview with the BC magazine, actually, was that you like working with the same collaborators, the same crew, which I think we all do.
Yes, well, I think hopefully Tommy's here somewhere. Kicking
I haven't seen Rawdon. Rawdon's not in here.
No, Rawdon lives in, I've lost contact with Rawdon. He lives in the Isle of Man now. And so I don't know what he's up to. I think Tommy's here somewhere. We did about
Any of Tony's crew?
We did about 10 or 12 films here. And
right at the back.
The Vicar and I did several films together. So no, it's I just find it makes it easier.
Yeah, that's good. And you also you said once that if it's a good script, you'll do the film anyway. That's the way you tackle things.
Well, that's right. Because sometimes people, if you've had an Oscar nomination or something like that, people go, "Oh, he'll be expensive. We won't send him the script." And I've always said, well, if it's a good script, I want to do it. The money is dealer handleable.
Yeah.
I mean, so for example, I did Asterix in Paris for a French company, and the money was not great, but I've always wanted to do a French film. That's why I did that language course.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to do a French film, and they were so nice, and they treated me so well. I mean, the producer was very concerned I didn't have a nice enough apartment, and the apartment was fabulous. And I said, "Oh, Pierre, don't worry, it's perfect."
Well, that's nice to hear. Yeah.
It was very nice to hear. I mean,
and that was a totally French crew, I'd imagine.
I was the only English person on it, and they could have buried me, but they were so nice. It was great. I had a very nice operator who I got on with very well. I did this B camera, he did the main camera, and we both discovered a great liking for fish restaurants. Yes. And he took me to all the best fish restaurants in Paris. It was fabulous.
So let's open it up to the audience now. Is there anybody would like to ask Tony a question about Howard's End or anything else? Nobody? Paul Collard.
Tony, you said you did a lot of the operating yourself. I was really impressed by the shot through when he was running through the bluebells.
Yes.
And the camera was really low and it was going right through, the bluebells, and I just wondered how you did that.
I was just handheld with the viewfinder like that.
It's incredibly smooth.
Yes.
Good BBC training, I think.
Well, that's right. I mean, one of the extraordinary things I find about there's so many films now that are all handheld, but it also seems so much of it seems to be artificial. I mean, I remember some documentaries you do at the BBC, for example, if you were being too steady, the director would come up and grab the magazine and shake it a bit. What that meant, God only knows.
Yes.
Because...
Didn't happen to me, thank God.
No, it didn't happen to me too often because I used to let them have it. But so many handheld films now seem to be artificially handheld.
Yes. Another question. Derek Suter.
Hi, Tony.
Hi, City.
Tony, what I loved about Howard's End was the close-ups. They weren't close. They were always a nice size. You could always see around you as well, with detail. Lots and lots of lovely detail, mate. It was fabulous.
Thank you very much. Well, that's function really of the widescreen. And that's one of the reasons I love the widescreen for several reasons. I mean, given the schedules we had to work in, and we had to get a lot done every day, you could do a lot in 2 shots. Jim is not a great one for going cut, 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 cut. So when you spent a lot of time lighting a set to make it look as good as possible, when you spent hours dressing it, I mean, I can't tell you the effort that went into dressing Fortnum and Mason's for that Christmas scene. It was staggering. Then, if you're going to kind of cut, 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 you miss it all. And it's quite nice to have something a bit more leisurely so you can take it all in. And 2 shots and things, and reasonable medium shots, work so well in widescreen. And that's one of the reasons I love it.
Detail in those close-ups.
Microphone, Derek, say again.
The detail in the
Microphone, Derek.
Closer thing. The closer.
That's the black
shots.
thing in front of you. Yeah.
It's a shot. What I loved was you kept the same sort of continuity all the way through.
Are we talking depth of field here?
It was absolutely fabulous how you kept that. Even to the 2 shots, reverse.
Yes. I wish I'd kept better notes because I can't remember what I did actually half the time.
Well,
But yeah.
I thought it was great.
Another question? Billy, in the foreground here.
Oh, Billy.
Down here.
Hello, Billy.
Well, hello. First of all, Tony, I thought it looked absolutely sumptuous.
Thank you very much, Billy.
I mean, it was beautifully photographed. Wonderful richness, marvellous compositions, camera movement. And it didn't look like a low-budget film at all. It looked as if you had all you wanted in the way of equipment and lighting, and the actors looked wonderful. And it's a marvellous example of the teamwork, the collaboration with the production designer and the set dresser, because it was all of a piece. And this marvellous feeling of the period and the environment, you know, the countryside. I thought it was just a most enjoyable film. Just a question about the 2K digital. Did they go back? Did you go back to the original neg, or was it off a CRI?
Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. I'm not entirely happy. I'm convinced it could be better than that. The distributors who put the money up, I mean, I'm grateful that they did put the money up and actually do something with it. It was all a site model. Some of the work was done in Lisbon, which I had no control of. Some of it was done in New York. They started grading in New York without my being there, and they were not being very successful. And they were, whether they were under the cosh for time or something, I don't know, but they seemed to be having a bit of a nervous breakdown on it. And Jim was very unhappy with what they did. Luckily for me, because then I said, look, bring it to London, do it at Deluxe, and we will sort out all the model. The problem we then had was the film had to be ready for a viewing at Cannes Film Festival. So we didn't have a lot of time to do it. Sometimes we had the original negative data to deal with, sometimes we didn't. There are a few scenes there I thought, it should look sharper than this, really.
Was it the original negative or the IP that you used?
That I'm going to find out.
Yeah. It looked like an IP to me.
That's what I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. But whether I'll ever find out, because, you know.
Yeah, of course.
Even so, you know.
Does anybody know, apart from the man at the front end?
Well, except for a few people here,
Yeah.
most people wouldn't notice that.
Yeah.
So, but I think you're probably right. But I will find out, which is a shame in a way. But there you go, because it isn't going to happen again. So.
Yeah.
And I only ever had one experience with Super 35, and I didn't get on with it at all. How did you find it? I mean, because you have to go to an optical, don't you?
Well, yes. One of the reasons I nagged Ismail to do the 70mm blow-ups was because of this very optical issue. And Technicolor, God bless them, had a very nasty machine to do it. And we saw the first optical, and it looked awful. Sorry if there's anybody from Technicolor. But whereas Deluxe, who had done the opticals for James Cameron and all those Terminator films, because he was a big exponent of Super 35, had a much better one. So we went to Deluxe.
Well, actually, if I may correct you, it was actually CFI who did all of... CFI did Titanic and all those
But
films.
I think over here that the...
over here, I beg your
think
pardon,
Deluxe
I don't
did,
know
yes.
over here. No, I'm talking about the original.
Anyway, it turned out that
development,
Deluxe had a better machine for doing that. So Technicolor went for that, for the squeeze and the blow-up. But I kept saying to Ismail, I said, look, if you do a 70mm blow-up, it'd be a direct 2 times blow-up from the Super 35, and I said, I think you'd be amazed at how good that looks. And they let me do some tests, and they liked it. And the only trouble was the Curzon Mayfair, which is where they showed it, didn't have 70mm projectors. And poor old Roger Wingate was obliged to buy 2 70mm projectors. I don't think he's ever forgiven me. And he said to Ismail, he said, look, I don't think this is going to put any more bums on seats. Well, you know, like 9 Oscar nominations and everything else. And in fact, we got this amazing letter because in America, they showed the 70mm prints at things like the BAFTA and the American Academy and places like, there was this big Cinerama cinema in West Hollywood and places like that, a few big roadhouse places. And I'm absolutely convinced that 70mm is what got them their Oscar nominations, not the one we saw in the local cinema. Now, of course, I mean, that's one good thing about that. I mean, even in my local flea pit, that still looks pretty good in Fakenham because they have digital cinema now, digital projection.
Any other questions? One here?
One little question, if I may. I was absolutely blown away by your use of soft light and the beautiful colours that you produced on that film. How do you feel artistically about hard light and hard lighting?
Well, I do that sometimes. I mean, certainly if you see my George Romero film, there's quite a lot of hard lighting in because I thought it should be dark and chiaroscuro looking. I don't think George quite agreed with that approach, but he didn't say any. He didn't, because what I hadn't realised, all his early films, in the days when you didn't have the internet, you couldn't really do the research that you can do now before you take a job, which is really handy. I hadn't realised that George had photographed all his early films. And I found them all a bit bright, to be truthful. So I was going for hard light and shuffling like that. And I don't think he was entirely happy with it. But he never said anything, so I carried on.
We let you do what you did, though.
Yeah, he did. Oh, yes, he did. Yeah.
Well, that's a sign of a professional.
Yeah. So no, I think hard light in its place is fine. I didn't seem appropriate. There's a few scenes where there's a direct, like where she rushes into the bedroom and has a big cry. There's a big 18K or something out the window, or probably 12K in those days.
So as DP, how much governance do you have over the lighting?
On a motion library film, as much as you need, the only governance really is a question of budget. I mean, most directors don't get too involved in the lighting. As long as you're quick, they're not too bothered, are they? I don't think that's...
Not that I've met.
Yeah, I had a very...
Not worked with Ridley Scott, mind you.
No, right, yeah. Well, exactly. There are some who are very, very specific. Or
Kubrick.
Yeah, well, essentially. I mean, it seems to me that some directors now really are... They want to be cameramen, actually.
Yes.
And you're just there as a functionary, which is kind of boring. But no, mostly it's... The big fight is not about the lighting, it's about the budget for the lighting.
Yes.
That's the one you want. And it doesn't matter, whatever film you do or however big it is, there's always a problem on the budget for the lights.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a refreshing glass of something in the bar. And in the meantime, my thanks to Mr. Tony Pierce-Roberts and an excellent looking film, and well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Well done.
And I'm glad you all enjoyed it. Thank you for coming.